I question the society we live in. How have we become more of a corporation than a nation? What is it that has led us here? How has our government, our neighbors, coworkers, and classmates or friends become so revenue driven that we believe that paving a new road is more important than helping a person in need put food on the table? Welfare policies have been in constant debate since the beginning of their time during the Great Depression. The question that we are addressing today is whether or not welfare recipients should be drug tested. But before you answer this question, I ask you to question whether or not you believe in the common myths involving welfare recipients, and if those beliefs actually impact your decision on this topic. One of the number one misconceptions is that people on welfare are lazy and just don't want to get a job. But here's the thing. Most welfare programs have strenuous application processes to help ensure that people are not abusing the system. Aside from that, 4 out of 5 people receiving welfare benefits are not supposed to be working. 8% are over the age of 60, 11 are disabled, 45% of them are children, and 58 of welfare recipients live in a household that actually receives earnings from a job. So the problem with that household that has a member of the at least one member of the family working, is the wages in our society. But for the few and far between that actually do cheat the system, they're still living a lifestyle that is by no means lavish. Public assistance programs are really just a safety net to help those that are below the poverty line rise up to that poverty line. So by no means are they living a lifestyle that when you were younger you ever dreamed about. They are still barely getting by. Are you actually aware that the financial eligibility cutoff in order for a family of 4 to receive supplemental nutrition assistance programs benefits, which is SNAP benefits, your food stamps that can only be used at the grocery store, the cutoff for a household of 4 is that they must make less than $25,000 a year to be eligible for food stamps. $25,000 a year is barely enough for 2 people to get by when you take into account rent and car payments and insurance and utility bills and groceries, everything else, let alone a family of 4 or a single mom that's trying to feed her 3 children. That's barely making it, and these assistance programs are necessary for them. Did you know that government assistance programs actually help generate revenue? For every $1 generated in SNAP benefits, $1.73 is generated in economic activity. So welfare benefits help the recipient and also help boost the economy, because otherwise they wouldn't have money to be spending at the grocery store. One of the most relevant arguments for drug testing welfare recipients is that by drug testing the recipients will reduce the funding allotted for public assistance programs and therefore save the taxpayer dollar or be able to spend them on more critical areas. But while drug testing may reduce the number of welfare recipients, the amount of money spent to perform the drug testing actually outweighs the savings. And not to mention, the 7 states currently implementing drug tests for recipients have really proven to be statistically insignificant. In Missouri, they have 38,970 recipients, and out of those, 297 tested positive for drugs. And they spent $336,297 on drug testing. In Oklahoma, there are 3,342 recipients, and out of that many recipients, 48 of them tested positive for drugs. And Oklahoma actually spent $300,085 on drug testing. In Utah, they have 9,552 recipients receiving welfare benefits, and out of those, 29 of them tested positive, and they spent $64,566 to perform this testing. In Kansas, they have 2,783 recipients. Out of those, 11 tested positive, and they spent $40,000 on testing. In Mississippi, they have 3,656 recipients, and out of those, only 2 tested positive, and their total spending was $5,290 for the drug test. In Tennessee, out of 16,017 recipients, 37 of those tested positive, and they spent $5,295. In Arizona, out of 142,000, 4,400 recipients, only 3 of those tested positive, and they spent $499 on testing. So each state has a different way of going about it because, like I said, it's federal funding that is kind of lump sum to the states, and they get to choose how to disperse the money. But out of the states that have passed these laws that requires the recipients to be drug tested, they have really proven an adverse outcome than what some people may have originally assumed. So not only are states spending more to conduct the testing, but there's actually very few results. So who are we helping by requiring welfare recipients to be drug tested? Yes, like every state may have eliminated a few welfare recipients, but those numbers are far and few between in comparison to those receiving benefits. We are not saving taxpayer dollars, so who are we actually benefiting? For me, I can't answer this question of whom we are benefiting because the answer is simple and the proof is there. Drug testing welfare recipients is not beneficial for any parties involved. But I can tell you who we are hurting. We are hurting the thousands of children who rely on their parents' SNAP benefits and welfare benefits to put a roof over their head and food on the table. By requiring drug tests, we may be taking away a child's only source of food for the week, regardless of their parents' drug use. We are harming addicts who have lost control of their addiction, who need rehabilitation to overcome this mental illness. We are harming those who desperately need our help and just turning our heads and acting like because they may suffer from an addiction or because they've made these choices, they are no longer human beings worthy of our compassion. We have become a country that turns their back on those in needs. And how can we do that? Poverty has become a cycle because many of those suffering are never able to access the resources they need to better themselves. Instead of requiring drug testing for welfare recipients, why don't we take actions to better our society as a whole, such as offering rehabilitation services for those suffering with addiction? We must not forget that those suffering in poverty are human beings that equally deserve the same rights that we receive. I can't help but think that if we were to act with compassion and kindness rather than being driven by money, the world we live in would improve. Our nation is only as strong as its weakest link, and we've got a lot of work to do.